Good evening, guys. We would like to welcome the ICRC head delegation, Ms. Clara Soborn, ICRC Regional Legal Advisor, Ms. Fiona Barnaby, our dignified guest, Mr. Fogg, Deputy Dean, Dr. Asmira, and also members of the Education Corps, Mifzal, Mubarak, and also Deborah. So without further ado, I would like to invite the chair, Hazem Tala, to start to hand over this the finals to him. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the ICRC International Humanitarian Law Debating Championship 2015. Congratulations to all the teams for making it to the finals. In opening government, we have Malaya 4. In opening opposition, we have DJ Twerk like Mailee. In closing government, we have Dems Armpit. In closing opposition, we have Ken and Brabie. Judging alongside with me is Ranjani, Lim, Saiful, and Kishanan. My name is Hazem. I will be the chair for this round. Without further ado, I invite the Prime Minister to open the debate at this house.
Mr. Speaker, if you are a supporter of the Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions movement, then you're unlikely to go to McDonald's after this round to buy an ice cream, right? But hopefully after this debate, you'll decide that McFlurry wouldn't hurt that much after all. Because of the aims of BDSM, I hope I can use that. The aims of BDSM is essentially this. They want to cause harm to Israel, so she are only justified and should only be warranted if they are actually wrong to begin with. We think that sanctions, for example, economic sanctions, your trade sanctions, and all of these other things, those practical effects are not elementary matters in this debate. We think this isn't necessarily about policy or feasibility. We think the debate is about, on principle, whether or not this movement is justified, and I'll convince you why it's not. First of all, let's talk about how the war is something that is, the war between Israel and Palestine is something that is culturally entrenched, right? We think that why they're essentially fighting to begin with, because there is a dispute on land. Who wants this land? Both of them. We think that two wars are particularly relevant in this particular debate. First of all, let's talk about early 20th century, right? When the British promised the Jews in Europe to give them some land in Palestine. So, and when those Jews were introduced in Palestine, they were systematically, they systematically lost rights over their land, right? In 1949, 5 Arab armies attacked Israel on the sole purpose to want to destroy Israel, right? So there was hostility that happened because the Muslims in general decided that, because they were constantly taking away these Palestinians' land, were majoritarily Muslim, and therefore there was a religious war that was emitting between them both. But secondly, the second war in 1969, the 6-day war, which was initiated by the Muslims, and Israel essentially won control over the West Bank, Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. So with all of those wars that occurred, what essentially happened? We think that Palestine had entrenched these values of wanting the destruction of Israel. They've always wanted to attack Israel first as any chance that they could get. Israel has always acted in self-defense. even earlier this year when there was a ceasefire, Palestine was the one who actually breached that ceasefire to begin with. So this just proves in itself how dire those entrenched ideologies actually are, in a little bit, showing that Palestine is inherently unwilling to give in for the sake of even a temporary peace. So what can we conclude from talking about these wars? We think that essentially, in some way, in the rules of just war, it is justified for Israel to actually obtain this land because they've actually won those wars that Palestine wanted to inherently bring to them to begin with. So in the rules of just war, it is actually something that is legitimate.
Ma'am, just to be clear, do you believe that Israel is the oppressed and they are just defending themselves against Palestine, the oppressor?
We're not talking about antagonizing anybody, and we're not talking about protecting anybody. This debate is whether or not it is justified for Israel to have to suffer the outcomes of these things, whether or not they acted in the right way, or they were in the right position, or they've done the right things when they were given those circumstances. And we think that they've done the right things. Which goes on to my second point. Why this dispute is extremely hard to solve, and you cannot simply blame Israel for not doing enough. What do both parties essentially want? They want control over Jerusalem, right? They want control over the sites. We think that it's important to recognize that there was always effort to want to create a compromise. The Al-Aqsa Mosque right now can only be prayed by Muslims, right? Even when Netanyahu want to give to Palestine the EZ1 land, it still wasn't enough, and they constantly wanted to demand more and fuller control over the areas, right? So we think that given that Jerusalem is something that is held very dearly to also Israel, not only the Muslims in Palestine, because it's their ancestral land and is talked about extensively in all of in both of their holy books. So they cannot simply just give up, right? We think that in 2009 there were peace talks that happened between Israel and Palestine have been inherently unfruitful. Right? In 2009, Netanyahu wanted peace talks and carried those out. President Ariel Sharon also decades ago wanted these peace talks. What happened? All of those failed. Israelis have wanted to talk, but the issue has become so complicated, and it's become extremely hard for a compromise to be achieved by both parties. Sure.
Ma'am, your case is essentially bashing all Palestinians and homogenizing all of them as terrorists. I think it's pretty sure that Israel has been oppressing Palestine in the first place.
What was I talking about for the first 2 minutes of my speech? I was essentially talking about the processes of how those wars essentially happened to begin with, right? How from the beginning they've never been the ones to initiate the wars. They were always put into those positions, post World War II. All these conditions were put upon them, and they've always tried to make the best out of those circumstances they were put into. What we think is happening right now is a deadlock. We cannot blame either party for doing the things that they've already done. We think that it's justified for Palestine to feel angry because their land has inherently been taken away from them. But we think at the same time you cannot delegitimize the idea that the British have inherently promised the Jews in Europe this particular land, right? This land in Palestine. So. And those wars happened, and from the effect of those wars, those territorial disputes that have happened that are set as they are right now. So you can't essentially say that one party was unfair or things like that. It's a deadlock now, and we think that Israel has done what it can, right? But furthermore, the last part I want to talk about how when you continue to antagonize Israel, you antagonize Netanyahu. And the world doesn't, and the world is continuously angry at him, and it disincentivizes these peace talks and these efforts into wanting to continue to try and create a negotiation with Palestine. We think that Netanyahu has essentially been a good actor in this war, right? We think that the fact that he's been very encouraging and open to the ideas of peace talks and ceasefires, and in this circumstance it's imperative to note that Israel has been, compliant to those ceasefires and never want to wage new wars. It is likely that if you continue to antagonize Netanyahu, he'll be disincentivized to want to continue this war, and makes it even harder for Israel and Palestine to want to achieve a future discussion in the first place. And we think that the movement that is happening right now is something that is going somewhere at the very least. We think that sure they're having these wars, but at least the fact that they're still in talking terms with each other, the fact that they still have discussions and they go to discussion table every single year is something that is important and a good movement. We think there is no real reason why this BDSM is in any way going to affect the easement of the solving of these problems, and we're very, very proud to propose.
I thank the Prime Minister for her speech, and now would like to invite the Leader of the Opposition to begin opening opposition's case. Here, here. Here, here. Leader of Opposition.
In the world of international relations, there's plenty of ways to express disapproval, from trade sanctions to travel restrictions and to arms embargo. But none of them resonate with public in quite the same way as a successful consumer boycott. In modern campaigners have been extremely successful when using boycott model against anti-apartheid activists to bring down white minority growth in South Africa. We think that the BDS movement is the important litmus test of decent behavior of human beings in isolating an oppressive government. The setup coming from opening opposition is simple. We're very clear that we're not going to take on the burden that's saying that the BDS movement will definitely end the Israel-Palestine conflict. But something that we'll do is we're trying to attempt to prove to you two things. A, is to create a conducive environment where change is more likely to happen. But B, at the very least, a decrease of funding to the Israeli defense forces in oppressing Palestine. Let's look at the stance coming from side opening opposition. We think that it's morally reprehensible to be complicit in the oppression of the Israeli government. Two arguments for you today. Firstly, talking to you about how it creates an unprecedented sense of collectivization against Israel, and secondly, on why the BDS movement will be able to change the incentive structure to fund or associate with Israeli occupations. But before that, let's go on several level of rebuttals towards what the Prime Minister tried to talk to you. Because opening government tried to talk to you about this. They tried to defend that Israeli is innocent because all the assault that they wanted to do is an act of self-defense. But we think that that is something that's completely wrong. We think that they came up with a naive conception and a naive conception. But on several levels, I will prove to you on why that is not self-defense. On the very first level, it's not self-defense. When one Israeli died and they want to go out there and kill 3,000 other Palestinians, we don't think that there's an act of self-defense. But secondly, it is also not an act of self-defense when these Israeli people want to go into Palestine and bomb children and bomb women and schools and hospitals there. We think that this is indiscriminatory. But on the third level, on why it is also to prove to you also why this is not a form of self-defense. Because Israel also signed on accounts to agree that the territory belongs to Palestine. But Israel illegally occupying these land and by killing everyone, we think that this shows you that they are clearly the oppressor in society. We don't think that side opening government stands. But after that, they are not willing to engage with Fatah when Fatah wanted to actually have a peace talk within Israel. Because Israel something that Israel didn't want to have. Because they to say that they but after that, let's Israel that and how the human rights patient NATO and global issues and young age. I think it's already almost a universal consensus that it really is the oppression. Recognizing Palestine state is something that non-issue that whether or not Netanyahu is already going to be antagonized anyways. But let's look on the argument coming from opening opposition on how this creates an unprecedented sense of collectivization against Israel. Let's look on the first level. How it reduces the barrier to access political change for individuals. Because let's look in status quo. The type of political awareness, there's only two ways. The problem within the type of political awareness within status quo. Number one is that it's inconvenient, and number two is that it's inaccessible. So it takes time for people to attend protests and also to join NGOs and actively participate in this cause. There's something that requires intellectually intimidating exercise. When people, even voting exists and they do not use people vote, they do not base things on a singular issue, they do not vote just based on the Israel-Palestine campaign, that is Israel-Palestine conflict that is going on. But why is boycott then better? Because we maximize this harm, because you untap the political disapproval of Israel, because you buy products day to day, it's something that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. Because you can also buy things that are not Israeli land. But this is something that requires very little knowledge to do it. Because the only thing you need to do is not buy Israeli companies, not buy Israeli products. But there are things that already assist society in doing so. Because number one, there are Bible videos that are really going on to tell people what is actually Israel products and what is not. But secondly, the EU already attempt to label all products of which belong to Israel. But let's look at these two things, right? Because number one is you allow people of the agency in participating in that political capital as well. But number two is you allow sustainable disapproval of a political something that is short-term under your side. Because under protest and discourse, how often can you attend those protests? Like maybe once or twice. But under our side, when boycott this economic products, when people can choose not to buy this product, is something that's a day-to-day behavior, something that we can do in the long term. But let's go on the second level and how it creates awareness that forces government to be more representative of the societal views. Because the US foreign policies is born to the Jewish lobby, which gets them away with a lot of things, because not everyone is not politically conscious. But now on our side, because the corporations are people that are protest, with the forefront of this cause, we think that corporations dominate the public's eye. But secondly, let's look at the voters. That is more likely forcing the government to take stance, to be accountable towards the societal views, to expressively disagree with the US foreign policies. Because before 60.
Hostility by both sides will prolong for as long as the land dispute is not decided. So to stop that war, you must solve the land dispute. How does this sanction solve that problem?
That's not our burden to put awareness of the sanction. We will be able to solve that problem, right? Because we are telling you why the BDS movement is more likely to change society and not buy Israeli products in the first place. But let's look at the past about how collectively societal push government to make changes to foreign policy. A, like US giving up in the Vietnam War, and B, the withdrawal of the troops from Afghanistan. But something that they have to respond positively, because the public relations between them will be disaster. When happening for US, with the structural academic boycott, when Stephen Hawking's withdrawal, the American Student Association voted to not consume Israeli products. But let's look at the second argument on why BDS movement will be able to change the incentive structure to fund, right? Because ultimately the corporation is the most responsive to consumers' feedback to allocate funds, right? Because there are two reasons of why these corporations actually fund these Israeli government Israeli products under status quo. Because of the CSR and how they're doing it for products. But if status quo, if people are boycotting this product, we think it's more likely for the corporations to cater towards the public's needs.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition, for a speech, and now I'd like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister to continue government's case. Here.
Can everyone hear me? Am I? in a mutual fight, it is not acceptable for you to just point the blame on one party. And that's what the supposed to be about. They claim that we were unresponsive, that we were not nuanced, we were naive. But look at this. I can agree with Mo for his authentic. But what's important here is that are your methods justifiable? Is it right? That is the question that they need to answer, and they completely neglected in their speech. We tell you that it's a complicated process and a lot of judgment, a lot of scrutinizing has to be made. So they need to tell us why it is so wrong, and why it is so wrong that it warrants the BDSM movement. It is so wrong that it's okay to punish them. We tell you that it is not okay. So let's move on to rebuttals before I move on to issues. Okay, so let's talk about firstly effects. So they gave a generic case on why boycotting is better and things like that. We say, yeah, true. Hey, no, we don't say true. Firstly, they say why boycotting is better. Okay, firstly, we need to understand. Boycotting doesn't really work. Look at what Calvin is eating, look at what Leroy is eating. All of them are eating McDonald's. So boycotting does not even work. Secondly, you need to understand the flip to it that Nadia talked to you about. How would this affect Israel? If you boycott them, the first thing that they will perceive is that it is an attack on them, attack on Israel. And that is very much detrimental. You can't get this. They talked about how cooperation. You can't tell me that cooperation will work, given that half of your companies on your Forbes 500 list are Jews to even begin with. So why would cooperation even have the incentive? But the flip to it is that Israel will pay. So let's draw it on the balance. It is very unlikely that your boycotting is going to work, but look at how Israel will respond to it. They will feel antagonized. It is harder for them to engage in peace talks. Why would I want to engage in peace talks when I can't even say that I'm not the only one that's wrong? Someone else did this to me too. When all you're doing is you're essentially pinning it down to Israeli and Israel alone, it's very much unlikely that they are going to go to a negotiating table with you. Why would they want to compromise with you when all you're trying to say is that you're wrong, when you have your own interest? And I'll talk about this interest later. So let's talk about this interest, right? Okay, let's just bring a little bit about what Nadia talked about. It was a just war. They attacked us. We took their land. And right now, their land has been inhabited by a few terrorist groups that I'm going to name later. And they didn't want to engage with them. We tell you they have the right to hold the land. And I'm going to explain thoroughly on that. Secondly, let's talk about how it's extremely hard to solve the conflict, right? This is what Nadia talked about. They claim human rights abuses happen. Well, if human rights abuses happen, go to the ICC, go to the ICJ, actually scrutinize the matter and ascertain whether human rights abuses has happened. Don't just take it into your own matter. Oh, let this BDSM that we think is wrong. I know it's a populist opinion to say that, oh, Israelis are wrong. Look into the matter and find out. If they are wrong, ICC is there, International Tribunal is there, Amnesty International is there, call them out. Don't just take matters into your hand, and I'll tell you why it is justified. So firstly, let's talk about how it is a move to protect their own people. The first prerogative of any leader sit down is to protect their own people. And this is pretty much important. Recognize this. Palestinians, yeah, what you see in the news, they are all suffering. I agree. Some of them are innocent. Recognize this. Bear in mind that Hamas is still there. Fatah is still there. They are essentially threatening the very existence of Israel in and of itself. They are threatening them to kill them. What have they done? Let's look at Hamas's main charter. Hamas is not Palestinian, by the way. Hamas' main charter is this. We want to bath Jerusalem in the blood of Jews. You have a group, Palestinian group, that is threatening to do that. What is your response? Obviously, you would have to be hostile. Obviously, you have to maintain some level of security. What have they done? They have killed people, indiscriminate killing, kidnapped child. They have dug a tunnel into Israel and kidnapped children. They have done that. So is it such an absurd or bizarre idea for Netanyahu to act back correspondingly? We don't think it is. We think it is perfectly justified. So what should they do? Once this attack has been made, what should Netanyahu do? Just all this land that has terrorists, the land that is controlled by Hamas, we don't think they should do it. And let's talk about where are they actually attacking. So, she lied when she said that we are bombing hospitals. We said no. Where are they actually bombing? Targeted attack. Facilities that contain terrorists. They properly ascertain whether that certain area contains terrorists. For example, in Gaza, if they recognize that that building could be a potential threat, if they are hosting Hamas's personnel, that is when they attack. And even then, do they simply attack? This is where you guys have to read up a little bit of news. They drop flyers to let you know that we are going to bomb that area. What else do? They have empty shell policies where you drop a shell to let you guys know that we are going to bomb these areas, not because we don't like you, but because we think that it's a terrorist. We think Hamas is there. We think that these people are going to blow our asses up. Therefore, we stop them. If Netanyahu really wants to kill the Palestinians, why don't you just round up all the Palestinians and shoot them? Why do you have ethnic Palestinians living in Israel? That is something that you need to understand. Please sit down. Secondly, let's talk about when can peace processes actually work, why Israel has been trying, and when can you actually give back. I'll talk about how Palestine has to be united before these things can even be given back. Before that, you.
So, even in your best case, where I accept that both Israel and Palestinians have done bad things with differing levels of justification, the difference is that there is no opposition to Israel's wrongs because they have such a huge lobby from the US. This is the only opposition we have, the BDS movement.
Amnesty International, Oxfam, World Group, they are constantly going up against Israel. Okay, and by the way, Palestinians have signed the ICRC, the Women's Statute. For that, you have an opposition that scrutinizes Israel. So let's talk about how it has to be united. For you to give back the land that has been inhabited by the terrorists, what's the first thing that you need to do? You need to understand and fully ascertain that Palestinians are united. Are they united? No. Gaza is controlled by Hamas. West Bank is controlled by Palestinian Authority and the Al-Fatah, which is the military branch. They are fragmented. They don't see eye to eye on things. Gaza is controlled by Hamas. All they want is the obliteration of Israel. If Muhammad Abbas can't even gather all the Palestinians around him, how can you give them a deal? It's unfeasible. Why so? Only when you unite, you can give them back. Only then you will have a sense of accountability that yes, I can fully ascertain that Palestinians are all united behind a peaceful leader. That's when we give them back. As long as you have a military branch, as long as you have a terrorist group whose charter is to basically decimate you in Jerusalem, how could we give your land back? Why? Because it affects Israeli interests. You can't just give them their land back. We have given land that is even inhabited by terrorists. Once they are terrorists, then you can't just give them back. Why? Because they could potentially kill you, and they have killed you. At the end of the debate, it's not about, boycotting works or not. Yeah, sure, maybe it could, maybe it couldn't, but you only antagonize them. The question that they need to answer, is it Israel's fault alone? Is it their fault, solely their fault, that they have to be punished? We say in a fight, there's always two parties that are fighting. Look into the fight. Determine who's right and wrong, then talk. Don't be fast to point the finger, supremely proud to poo-poo.
Then Deputy Prime Minister for his speech. Now I'd like to invite the Deputy Leader of Opposition to continue opposition's speech. Here.
To claim that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is an equal and legitimate fight is about as equal sounding to Zionist propaganda as you might get within the modern society. I will quickly get rid of this as fast as I can because this is not the debate, and I won't allow clothing to win this purely because OG decided to make this a part of this debate. So let's try to spend at least less than 1 minute on this. So is it a legitimate conflict? 3 reasons why not. Number 1, international humanitarian law says that self-defense must be proportional. When we look at the death tolls and the status quo currently, the death of the IDF forces are about 3 people, all of whom are soldiers, all of whom are legitimate military targets. For Palestinians, we are reaching 30,000 deaths, all of those included women and children. Proportional, I don't think so. So even if you have a legitimate reason to do so, your military response was completely illegitimate and in direct violation of human rights. Secondly, is it a legitimate territorial confusion of what lands are yours? On the exact same document that Israel signed, called the Oslo Accords, guys, they agreed explicitly and drawing the lines on the map that land belongs to Palestinians. And then they forcefully used force to create massive amount of refugees, structural deprivation of rights, and illegally occupied their land. There's no historians that will support you guys in this part of the debate. You're not getting there. Thirdly, did Hamas fire rockets? Yes, but maybe once in a couple of years. In this year, when they acted in self-defense, UN
on the ground said that Israel falsified that accusation and then used Hamas rockets as a farce to then justify its illegal military defense against women and children on the ground. And they did bomb a UN school, guys. Get your facts straight and try to be the news at some point. And none of these things prove that in any way this is a legitimate response by Israel. There's a near universal consensus that Israel is the oppressor and Palestinians are the oppressed. With that set in mind, can they justify that all the responses by Israel is legitimate? No, it is clearly oppressive, and you are morally complicit to defending the oppressive government. Try to justify that harm right now. Sadly, you can't. What about getting Israel angry? Let's do away with this as well. Because if that was the main harm that OG wanted to prevent, it's a harm that they will never be able to prevent under status quo as well. Because clearly, massive amounts of countries under status quo are already currently antagonizing Israel, even the absence of the BDS movement. The entire Arab world has travel restrictions and zero diplomatic ties with Israel. The EU has an arms embargo on Israel. There's a near universal consensus to recognize that Palestinians are right and Israel is wrong by recognizing Palestine as a sovereign state. Even after that recognition, take point of this sit down, there was no resurgence of violence in Israel when the entire universal community decided to grant those rights to Palestine. So we don't think there's a direct correlation between Israel's anger and giving Palestinians more rights. We believe, in fact, they're desensitized towards it, and we have to put more acute pressure where they actually feel the losses and the actual outcomes of their action. But secondly, they want to talk about what about ICC and universal human rights. We're very happy to bring them to the ICC, guys. Unfortunately, they're not signatories of the ICC, and there's nothing we can do about it. So we need a bit more realpolitik by forcing them to change their behavior in ways where they can actually feel the harms of their action. Two questions I'll answer, positive material integrated. Number one, will this boycott have any sense of efficacy? Secondly, will corporations reduce funding to the IDF? I will have some extra material within this, but before that, yes.
So the Likud party recently won the election on the framework they would never give Palestinian rights because they were attacking Israel. How is your side moderate an already highly contentious political climate?
Look, that won't change otherwise, right? The BDS movement was never having the burden to change that because regardless of what rhetoric we sell, that reality will still remain true. That's why at the very least, the burden that OO fulfills in this debate to structurally reduce Jewish funding from the diaspora all across the world and reduce the amount of foreign policy support for Israel to continue this oppression at the very least. Maybe at one point in time where they don't have the US's support and they don't have that amount of incremental funding, that at least we minimize oppression to the maximum level possible. Will this boycott have any sense of efficacy? Number one, the only thing they told you from OG, it just won't work because people just won't do it. Very easy for you to say, guys, except in status quo, they're already doing it. It's not just moderates who are doing it through moral lobbying. Moderate Jewish individuals in Israel themselves and in other countries are doing it. We hear the Australian Jewish Democratic Society making a full-on boycott. The International Jewish Group where Jews for the Palestinian right of return are doing it as well. The Movement for Reform of Progressive Judaism is doing it as well. Why do we think they're doing this? Take a seat. It's also positive material because the BDS movement has received tremendous global success because now we're allowing them to disassociate the oppressive Israeli occupation with Judaism itself. And then there's a lot of powerful narrative in forcing Israel to change or reducing support for Israel because the Jewish diaspora, like they say, is a powerful economic bloc that is lobbying for foreign policies that are pro-Israel in nature right now. But the only reason they do that because Israel is using that rhetoric that Armpit says, we're doing it to protect our Jewish father and protect Judaism in general. So now we're going to tell them that the Israeli war, if you help them, you're not helping Judaism. You're merely helping the territorial oppression of Israel. Jewishes all over the world have nothing to gain from funding that war. So don't fund Israel purely because they're saying it's in the name of Judaism. This is not a religious war. This is a territorial conflict that only benefits the sovereign territory of Israel. That disassociation will then allow all your Jewish shareholders in the Forbes 500 to reevaluate their political position. And why will they change? Why will they change exactly? And this answers the second question on will corporations reduce funding to the IDF? Again, the only response period from OG is that Jewish shareholders dominate Forbes 500 for two reasons. Number one, the only reason why they're funding IDF right now is for corporate social responsibility because they feel like it's a noble cause to support the Israeli war, like OG believes. But the only reason CSR exists is so that you improve the image of corporations in order to then gain more profit. If this is directly competing with a profit incentive model by the collective consumer saying it ruins your image to support an oppressive Israel, that means there's no point in CSR if it's completely counterproductive to that profit incentive. And that's why CSR incentives will move in a way to get more profit by saying our image is better when you don't support the Israeli war. But secondly, they do this because Jewish shareholders have a lot of stake within BOD meetings, for example. But now we're going to tell you, in competing interests, when shareholders happy, but it reduces the sustainable business model of the company, you allow non-Jewish shareholders within those meeting rooms to say, to make you happy, we have to sacrifice the sustainability of this company. What about as non-Jewish shareholders and our stake in an interest? You create a possible narrative to force them to defund the IDF and defund the Israeli war. That's a narrative they can only get from outside of the house. What more? They never told you or engaged in any material that came from Jolie's speech that even if it's not effective right now, the boycott creates a political avenue where it could potentially be far more successful. What have we told you? Number one, it reduces the barrier of entry to express political avenue in a way that other alternatives under status quo simply cannot embody. Not everyone can go to a protest and participate in discourse, but everyone within their consumer behavior can simply choose to buy product A and product B. In the same way that EU is supporting the BDS movement and trying to label all products as being pro-Israeli or anti-Israeli, we create the most sustainable political avenue to disregard and disassociate Israel that we don't have currently in the status quo. Extremely proud to oppose.
Thank the Deputy Leader of Opposition for his speech. And now to begin the closing half of the debate, I invite the Member of Government. Here.
When I asked the POI about the current Israeli government becoming more right-wing, it wasn't to ask you about corporations. It was to ask you about the political climate that Israel currently has and how you make it worse. We think closing government this debate will say that we agree the Israel-Palestine conflict is a long, drawn-out conflict that maybe the solution we will never be able to find out what it is. But the point at which you economically and politically isolate Israel is the point at which they are not losing the war. We think the Palestinians will suffer, Israel will become more right-wing, and that's the world in which Palestinians will die. Before I go on to my extension in 3 layers, I would like to make a clarification. The first thing I will say is this BDS movement is not united in any manner. The individuals who support the BDS movement are your Muslim world. The American individuals with AIPAC and other organizations, Germany still pays reparation for the Holocaust to Israel. These countries don't support your BDS movement. A large portion of Christian states who believe the Jewish cause is a valid cause don't support your BDS movement. So even if your BDS movement is successful in economically isolating them, we think the counter force that will fund Israel is far worse in its capacity to shape Israeli politics. So the first question, does this collective front make it more accountable? Should do two parallels to post-apartheid South Africa and Vietnam. The first thing we will say is the apartheid regime was like indefensibly wrong. We think Israel is a defensible position by most Jewish communities. The fact that we cannot agree if Jerusalem belongs to Palestine or it belongs to Israel is a point of contention that most people feel is valuable. Secondly, the movement against Vietnam was because the United States was involved and they were losing that war. Israel is winning that war. We are currently occupying 3/4 of West Bank and Gaza. The 6-day war was the fastest occupation we've ever seen. This is no world in which Americans are going to suddenly support the Palestinian cause, considering there are radical groups like Fatah and Hamas. To which she says, it's important for companies to not fund Israel, and that means their board directors will introspect their lives and become more accountable. The first thing we will say, if a Jewish individual who has been fighting for the cause their ancestors had for hundreds of years, he would not mind giving up economic opportunities. That is absolutely secondary to his Jewish cause that you will harm under your side. But if it is true that corporations will pull out, we say they will pull out, and that's perfectly fine. But the people who will counter-fund Israel is AIPAC, is the United States government, are individuals from moderate groups around the world who are Jewish and will send money in. So you might have a boycott movement for companies, but that does not mean it's sustainable in causing change. Sit down. But the last thing she says, you need to have a united front because apparently that means you have an active opposition to Israel. The first thing we will say is a united opposition to Israel means absolutely nothing. Like the Oslo Accord didn't mean anything. Yasser Arafat got assassinated. Individuals don't even agree that we should have signed it anyway. So that is not a reason to say that Israel is moderating. My extension is, here we go. Before that,
The global community is already in isolation with Israel. So if your extension is to prevent these harms in Israel, how will you remove the antagonization by 90% of the global community that they already suffer in the status quo?
No, we are going to explain to you how the current antagonization has made things worse, and you are in a far worse position than you were during the Oslo Accords. First thing, how we think the isolation increases radicalization and isolation of Israel. So a few things you must recognize, right? The individuals who are winning this war, on the winning side of the war, is not Palestinian. It is the Israelis who have a systematic blockade on Gaza, who control the aid that enters Gaza.
decides whether or not to engage with the PLO, decides whether or not to engage with Fatah in most circumstances. Second thing is, we also think they are the ones in charge of settlements. Like, even with international pressure and scrutiny, they still moved in to a large amount of these areas. They still entered because it was more viable for them for two reasons. One is because we think the Likud party has recently become more right-wing in nature. This means two things. Their current majority within the Knesset is highly contingent on them defending the Jewish cause. So more moderate individuals who would have voted otherwise have now voted the Likud party in. These moderate individuals you have lost because you claim that their children are not getting food, their children are being isolated for the Jewish cause. It is not true. At the point at which you isolate them, they are suddenly going to introspect and feel bad about themselves. How are they going to feel bad if they feel it's part of their religion, if they feel that it's intrinsic to identity? We think individuals won't feel bad about what they do. They will feel angry about what you've done to them. But the second thing you do is you lose moderate Jewish individuals. People who would have supported the fight for Palestine now feel like it's a fight to defend their children and defend the Israeli government because they will lose economic opportunities. So maybe under your side you will isolate them and you will deprive people, but you won't deprive the government who will still fund the Iron Dome by the United States. You will deprioritize individuals on the ground who you're going to starve money from. This means, Mr. Speaker, what Israel will do is two things. Number one, they will increase the isolation of aid from Gaza. Gaza is currently being blockaded, status controlled by them. I am explaining why status quo has become worse. Like, listen, right? We think this means the isolation of aid will increase to a greater degree. The current settlements that happened have increased in propensity. We didn't want to go to the United Nations and have a discussion. We chose to go to the Congress because the Republicans support us with our current standing. This means that under your in the world in which we live in, status quo is a world in which there's an increased radicalization of the Jewish state. Second thing we will say is that a world in which the Jewish state is increasingly radicalized as a result of economic deprivation is also a world in which you radicalize Palestine. Sit down. We think to a large extent the reason why there's a resurgence of terrorism and Hamas not moderating is a result of Israeli becoming more right-wing. So not only do you make Israel more right-wing, you increase the capacity of Hamas to recruit, you increase their capacity to dissociate from Fatah. Not only that, you antagonize the Muslim world who has now come in support of Hamas and the increased war. This means, in your best case scenario, you're going to have a protracted, prolonged conflict. And that conflict, Mr. Speaker, does not lie in the hands of Palestinians who will keep on fighting because that's their cause. It lies in the hands of Israelis who will keep on shelling them. But on top of that, they have a cause. They currently have a cause you give to them because they have to defend their Jewish children who don't have food. They have to defend individuals because they don't have education because you say we need to boycott them. So if it's true, you increase pressure on Israel, your pressure will not result in positive change. It will result in individuals being victimized and it will result in Israel becoming more radical. And the point at which you make this war a protracted and prolonged war is the point at which individuals are less likely to go to the United Nations. Things like having a shared Jerusalem, things like maybe sharing borders and allowing free movement of individuals will never happen because you say it's either you give up Palestine or you're going to be economically isolated. We think that's the point at which Israel will never agree with you and you will never find a consensus on it. So the conclusion to closing government is maybe the war is hard to fight. Maybe it's not true that we have a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But if you make Israel more radical, if you increase the capacity for Hamas to militarize and Muslim states to join in, you highly increase the tension within the Middle East and you decrease our capacity to find a middle ground because you harm not the Iron Dome, you harm Israeli children, and that's when they can defend their religion the best.
I thank the member of government for her speech. Now I'd like to invite the member of opposition to be closing opposition's case. Here.
Okay, guys.
The reason as to why this boycott, divestment, and sanction movement was envisioned was because all other methods have failed. We have tried to negotiate with Israel, it failed. With Saudi countries placed sanction on them, it failed. We're going to prove to you in our extension why, firstly, this BDS movement is the best way to gain critical mass, and we'll draw comparisons to US and how the Orthodox and versus Zionist Jews and how this swings these two entities. And secondly, the trend analysis as to when Israel will make concessions. Because there has been trend like they make concession, but it's not enough. We are going to push this even further. But before that, let's deal with some rebuttal. So I think let's just single out opening thing here, because I think like what they are saying is A, historically untrue. B, it's like really discriminatory to Palestinians. But here's the key thing of their case. They told us, let's not support BDS. Let's somehow support the ICRC. Let's somehow support the ICC. If that was their premise, all of their harms of antagonizing Israel still falls on their side. Because you putting Israel in ICC still antagonize them, it's still going to be a harm under your side. Then Amrit told us in her extension, the BDS movement is not united, therefore we should not go for it because it's not really working. But I think when approaching this, we have to look on a comparative. The comparative we have to look under her bench is no form of movement at all versus some form of movement. We recognize that there are some systemic difficulties for us to fund that, but on a comparative, some form of protest is still better than no protest on all under her side. But next, she told us that there will be counter narratives against that. We tell that this will still happen under both sides, because we tell that Netanyahu would still find any reason to antagonize Israel as much as possible, because this was their characterization, right? Netanyahu is growing even more right-wing. Therefore, even if we not impose the BDS on Israel, he will just find a reason to be even more right-wing in the first place, something that they have to deal with. The next, they tell you companies would still fund the Israel movement. But here, once again, we have to approach on a comparative between some form of money lost by companies or no money at all. No, thank you. But next, they told you that isolations increase radicalization. I think radicalization would happen anyway in the status quo. Even at the absence of BDS movement, they would still radicalize. But however, there's also a scale in which how radical they can go. We force them into a corner. Because let's recognize, right? So long as they have economic losses, they can't move. They told you that you increase the capacity of Palestine to radicalize, and they recruit even more people. I will explain some of this in my extension, but firstly, it's pretty important to delineate between Hamas and Fatah over here, because I think they kind of jumble up these two entities. Because let's look like Hamas, for example, we don't condone their actions of terrorism, but let's look at Fatah on the first place. We doubt that Fatah would still control discourse. They would still control dodgy actions that is done. That's why Fatah condemned what Hamas did, slashing people on the road. But secondly, we doubt that they are radical right now because all other methods have failed. Protests have failed. Israel has ethnic cleansed them. This is the movement that is best for them. Before I move on to my extension goal. You.
So, in a world in which the Muslim world literally is starving Jewish kids because you defend the Palestinian cause, give me one reason why Netanyahu will become more
super poor. I think Israel will still get some money from Benjamin Netanyahu. Sit down. Why this is the best way to gain critical mass. And here's the comparative we'll make, what's happening in USA between the Orthodox Jews and Zionist Jews. This is happening around the world. The Orthodox Jews do not support the actions of the Likud party, but the Zionist Jews support them crazily. This is a very divided faction within the world, and we think that there are people moving around this. Moreover, I think it's important to realize that there are skewed news that exist within Israel. For example, news in Israel mostly glorify the actions of the Likud party and antagonize Palestinians as a whole. Many people on the ground don't realize the harms of those kind of action. How does this BDS movement change? Because let's recognize the characterization that BDS is transboundary. It's not only sanctions where it directly affects the Likud party itself, it's transboundary. It affects Jewish people and everyone on the ground will know. Firstly, since Jews owns a lot of corporations, they would be the first one that feel the pinch. Companies like Nestle that somehow votes or that gives them money, or Starbucks would feel the pinch. Secondly, it forces the companies to rethink. Because let's recognize in sit down, the Orthodox Jews in the USA. So, for example, like they hate what the Likud party does, but at the point where they actually feel the pinch even more is the point where they pressurize Israel even more to rethink their policy. Thirdly, people on the fence, because we think that these kind of effects are visceral. These effects, like everyone, if we are boycotting something, everyone would know that you are particularly boycotting a particular company. We thought that people would realize that this is a last resort method and therefore would question these kind of things. And fourthly, they told us about losing moderate Jews. I don't think so, right? Trend analysis will tell you that this is not the case. What is happening right now is that Orthodox Jews are attacking the Israel government even more. Because Orthodox Jews didn't just naturally suddenly victim blame the Palestinians, because Orthodox Jews realize that there's some form of systemic discrimination that exists and something that they have to change. Therefore, we think that this kind of groups will pressure the Likud party even more, something that's even better because this is transboundary, not only like sanctions, which is directly to one party itself. Next, how would Israel make concession? Because let's recognize that the concessions right now made are quite limited. So there are times of international pressure, for example, when Netanyahu was forced to actually retract his statement and moderate in Congress after his controversial elections in which Obama limitedly criticized him. We say that it's very hard to make concessions and force this kind of thing into Israel. Why is the BDS good? This is more large scale than normal sanctions, because normal sanctions, as I told you and characterized to you, is only directed towards government. With this BDS, it's not only government that support the sanctions, but people also can support this kind of movement and boycott Israel as a whole. And this is another extension coming over here, that people from countries that support Israel can still protest against Israel. Because firstly, Israel will know that there are people in countries that will protest against them. So for example, if USA does not protest so much against Israel, I as an American can protest by boycotting American goods. Secondly, it forces the government in that country to rethink their approach. Because let's recognize there are some countries that blindly support out of fear, such as the Jewish lobby that exists in USA. And thirdly, it forces the countries to think more about supporting Israel. For example, in USA, where this movement has actually forced them to criticize Israel more and more. We want Israel to rethink their strategy. We also think that there's a limit to how much Israel can go. The question is then, what is the best way forward? We say there's no other option left. Every individual should support this thing.
Thank the member of opposition for his speech. Now I'd like to invite the government whip to wrap up the government's case. Here.
The areas that mean a lot to Israel, a war that they fought for a really long time. A BDS movement that decided on behalf of them who gets to get the land. The way in which we engage with Israel to not tell them that we will starve you if you don't give up the land, because we most likely think that they will agree. They will concede, starve us, because those land mean more to us. That is when you give them the victim card in this war. You give them the victim card to amp up Jewish lobby. You give them the victim card to amp up Jewish funding. That means it suddenly becomes their fight against anti-Semitism, and we think it becomes way worse for Palestinians on the ground who Israel has control over. And that's when you lose the war on opposition. I would like to talk about Armpit in this debate, right? Because I think the extension is extremely important. It was largely about by Kenneth. What is the outcome to the people on the ground within Israel and Palestine, right? Because we already told you in my opening line that we will not give up this, especially if your alternative is that if you give up this amount of land, we're going to starve you. They're willing to concede. The context that Armpit gave you is that the amount of control that these individuals have over Palestinians is vast. They control the aid that it goes in. They control whether or not these individuals get to go to school and things like that. These things are very important for us to recognize, because the moment you give them the victim card, all the shootings that Mai talked about in this debate will increase, right? Because they will shoot you because I'm in defense of my children. I'm in defense of the individuals of Israeli who are starving. Kenneth come up and made fun of us. Oh, Israelis are not poor. Then how the hell does your policy work if they're not poor? I really don't understand how that was a response, right? But secondly, let's talk about about radicalization of the Israelis on the ground, right? Because we think it's very important that we recognize internally, right? Because more than that, besides the shooting, they have the legitimacy to say that you don't deserve the aid as all, because we are also being starved. That's when you hurt more Palestinians on the ground. We shot you not because we were angry or because of the war. We shot you because you hurt us with the BDS movement as well. But secondly, let's talk about the radicalization of Palestinians, right? When we told you from Amri's speech that if you increase and radicalize the right wing in Israelis, Hamas is most likely to act in self-defense as well, right? What happens to them when they become really defensive, right? Number one, you homogenize them not because they are angry in the war, but you homogenize Hamas to be very violent, and you homogenize Palestinians on the ground to be very, very violent as well, just because they were acting, just because they were acting defensively. What happens then is becomes logically in the real world, we lose the sympathy card for the Palestinians who are suffering, but they were actually acting on self-defense only, right? But moreover, we like to talk about the response that Kenneth gave to us, right? He told us that no, we were rather at BDS than no opposition. We told you explicitly in Amrit's speech that we are okay with no opposition, so long and so forth we are waiting for an opposition that is valid, because we're not willing to give Israeli the victim card. But moreover, Kenneth then said, oh, there's enough radicalization, it cannot get any worse from that. He doesn't understand the scale then. If 14 teenagers, Palestinian teenagers can be shot today, we think 14,000 can be shot with the excuse of you hurting Israelis by then, right? But even more so, we think that you radicalize in the name of anti-Semitism. That means that we're not shooting Palestinians because we want to win the war. We're shooting them because they hurt us first. That is way worse under their side. We saw that, Mike.
The trade-off to a poorer Israel is lesser military funding of a killing machine. And if you paint such a doomsday scenario for Israeli politics that we can antagonize them ever, is your only solution to allow Israel to just continue killing?
Okay, so I'm going to respond to that very simply in the second thing I'm going to answer, right? About how the world will react towards post policy, right? Because we think it's very convenient for OO in this debate to go like, oh, the world is reducing their funding towards Israeli. Like, hello, the Republican caucus in America exists. The Jewish lobby is so large and it still exists, right? We think those things are untrue. We will concede that there is a less funding that's going in to Israeli from the Arab world, but we will not concede that the Jewish lobby will pander. We will think it was under their side, right? But moreover, we will argue that necessarily how you increase the funding towards them, right? Because because the way in which we boycott them is very important, right? If you boycott on behalf of BDS, whereby BDS has no involvement of the war whatsoever, they enter Israel and they decided who stand, it's easy for them to use the victim card. But secondly, we think that the Jewish company are inherently tied to the Jewish cause as well, and they will act differently and they act defensively as well. That's necessarily give them the sympathy towards funding them even more, right? So even if some companies pull out, we think it's marginal and the converse is more likely to happen, right? That Israel can say that we are starving right now because of no absolute reason. They didn't even try to reach a resolution with us. They didn't even try to talk to Israelis. That's why we need the funding from these Jewish companies. And they were more likely to do so. But moreover, no thank you. We also think that in status quo, we can concede there is some form of boycott, right? But your side gives the credence to continue the support because you use some sort of defense and anti-Semitism idea, right? The world is against us with BDS. We need more support, more likely, right? But moreover, we think that the victimization of Israel hurts other people as well. And what are the individuals that we're talking about, right? Because the comparative is not compliant versus Palestinian being hurt. The comparative is countries pumping in more money because they feel like Israel is being hurt versus our side, where we don't radicalize Israel and we give reason to stop the radicalization. Because we will concede to what OO said, that the war may be winning on Israelis, but the war on sympathy is winning within Palestinians. You lose the bargaining chip that Palestinians left with, and it is extremely important in this debate. No, thank you, I'm not taking anymore, right? So our side is better at keeping the Jewish lobby in check because you don't fund money into Israel because you don't get to use the sympathy card. But moreover, I'll deal with something else that might add in this debate, right? That you paint the picture that the war is not worth fighting, hence like compliance necessarily happen. We highly disagree, right? Because the only way in which you can convince that the whole world that is like it's very hard for you to convince the whole world that this war is not a war between Israelis and Palestinians, right? We're most likely going to see the Israelis using the defense of the fact that Palestinians are attacking them and anti-Semitism to win that war, right? So all the condemnation only comes from anti-Semitism as well. But secondly, we think that it perpetuates we have to use the perspective of Israel to argue this, right? Because they will convince the whole world that the BDS is doing this on the grounds of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
The whole world is doing it on the ground of anti-your religion, right? That's how the Jewish lobby amps up, because they also have to act in an idea of self-defense. They also have to act in the idea that we support the Jewish cause, and your side of the house victimizes as well. So if you want to argue your argument, you need to convince me, you need to convince the entire government bench, and you can necessarily convince the world that this war is not between Israelis and Palestinians, right? But secondly, let's talk about the idea of pressure, the little thing that cannot add that is not a rehash, right? Because we think that that pressure comes from this, right? He said that you feel that companies feel pressure to pull out Israeli. We don't think so. We think that the response by the Likud government is to not say that you are hurting us, but to say that we are defending ourselves. That's why we need your support. That's mean moderates on the ground gets even worse, because we see you as being victimized. We will enter your country and we continuously fight you, right?